Imagine holding a ticket, and not just any ticket, but a golden ticket. For the last few years, this was the thing whispered about in tech hubs, from Bangalore to Lagos.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the ultimate pass for international founders.
It really was. We're talking about the Canadian Dream packaged right into a single piece of paper. You get up to 5 co-founders, you bring your families.
And you get direct permanent residence in Canada.
And here's the absolute kicker. The business didn't even have to succeed for you to stay.
That was the Canadian Startup Visa, or SUV. And for a long, long time, it was arguably the most attractive immigration pathway for entrepreneurs anywhere on the planet.
But here's why we're doing this deep dive today. On January 22nd, 2026, if you're listening right now and hoping to grab one of those tickets, well, I have some bad news. The machine has stopped.
It has. As of 3 weeks ago, January 1st, 2026, the government has officially hit the brakes. The program is currently paused for any new intake.
So the golden ticket machine it's out of order.
Completely. And that pause has created this massive rift in the landscape. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur looking at Canada right now, you fall into one of two very distinct groups.
Group A or Group B.
Exactly. And mixing them up isn't just a minor error. It could be fatal to your entire immigration plan.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this isn't just a minor delay. This is a fundamental shift.
Huh?
So Group A and Group B, who are they?
Group A, well, these are the people who are hearing a clock ticking very, very loudly right now. They're the founders who managed to get their commitment certificate from a designated organization.
An angel, VC, or incubator.
Right before the ball dropped on New Year's Eve 2025. They are, you could say, a grandfathered in.
So they made the cutoff. They should be safe, right?
You would think, but they're actually walking a tightrope.
And Group B.
Group B is everyone else, the aspiring founders who didn't get that certificate in time. For them, the doors to the legacy program are closed, and they're facing a totally different reality.
So today, our mission is to map out this new terrain. We need to look at why this legacy program became a victim of its own success, the huge risks looming for those holding those 2025 certificates.
And then we have to talk strategy for everyone else.
Because there is still a move left on the board, isn't there?
There is. It's a pivot to something called the C11 work permit. And frankly, if you're in Group B, it's the only viable play you have right now.
All right, let's dive in. Segment 1, the legacy track. So if you're in Group A, you've got that piece of paper, that commitment certificate from 2025. You might be thinking, great, I'm safe, I beat the deadline.
And that assumption, well, that could be a fatal mistake. You're not safe. You are on a countdown. There's a hard deadline that came with this reset, June 30, 2026.
That is, what, 5 months from now?
Effectively, yes. Less, really. If you hold a 2025 certificate, you must submit your full permanent residence application by that date.
And if you miss it?
If you miss that date, it's not like you just pay a late fee. You could lose your grandfathered status entirely. You'd have to face the new rules, the new pilot program, which we expect to be much, much stricter.
Wow. So the ticket literally expires.
In a sense, yes. The government is trying to clear the deck. They've got this massive backlog, and this deadline is their way of flushing the system.
Okay, let's back out for a second. Remind us why people were fighting so hard for these certificates in the first place. What made the legacy SUV so special?
It was the low barriers to entry. It was almost unheard of. I mean, think about the investment tiers. If you were backed by a venture capital fund, they needed to invest $200,000.
Yep.
If it was an angel investor group, it was $75,000.
Which is still money, for sure. But for a serious tech startup, raising 75 grand isn't some astronomical figure.
Exactly. But the real volume, the flood of applicants, came from that third stream, business incubators.
And what was the investment requirement for them?
$0.
Zero.
You just had to be accepted into their program. No cash needed from an investor into your account. You just needed the letter.
And on top of that, you could bring a whole team.
Practically, up to 5 co-founders on a single business. And the math was interesting. Each applicant only needed 10% of the voting rights. The whole group, plus the organization, had to hold more than 50%.
So you could slice up the pie 5 ways, bring 5 families, and nobody had to put up $1 million.
Right. And then you compare that to the other requirements, like language.
Yeah.
CLB-5. It's an intermediate basic level. Can you order coffee and explain your business simply? You pass.
And the settlement funds.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to be wealthy.
Far from it. You just had to prove you could support yourself. It was around $15,000 for a single person. It was just incredibly accessible.
So low barrier to entry plus direct PR equals a flood.
A deluge. The program just became a victim of its own success. We're talking about processing times ballooning to over 37 months.
That's over 3 years.
Imagine you're a tech founder. You have an AI idea in 2023. By the time your application is processed in 2026 or 2027, the technology's completely changed. You're in limbo.
A startup visa that takes 3 years isn't really a startup visa anymore.
Yeah, exactly. The government saw that backlog and knew the system was clogged, so, hence the pause. They have to clear the pipes.
Okay, so if you have your 2025 certificate, you're part of that backlog. You have to file by June 30th. But let's move on, because getting the application in is one thing. Getting it approved is something else entirely.
Precisely. And this is where the anxiety should be kicking in for those certificate holders. Just because you have the ticket doesn't mean you get on the ride.
So what's the biggest trap here? Where do people go wrong?
It's 2 words: active management.
Active management. It sounds simple. You have to, run your business.
It does sound simple, but in practice, it's the #1 failure point. Here's the classic scenario. A founder gets their certificate, they apply for PR, but while they wait, that 3-year wait, they just stay in their home country.
Maybe they keep their old job because, you've got bills to pay.
Right. Or you think, I'll move when I get the PR. But IRCC requires you to manage the business from inside Canada if you're on a work permit. The expectation is engagement.
So if an officer looks at your file and sees you've been sitting in Mumbai or London for 2 years just waiting.
That is a refusal. You cannot be a passive investor. The startup visa is not a golden visa where you buy your way in. It's a working visa.
And this must be a huge issue for that incubator stream we mentioned, the one with zero investment.
That stream faces the highest level of scrutiny. The government is cracking down hard on what they call the shell game.
The shell game. That sounds illicit.
It can border on it. Essentially, founders would pay a fee to an incubator for a letter of support, but then do no real work. It was a transaction, not a business. So now IRCC uses something called peer reviews.
A peer review. How does that work?
An independent panel of industry experts looks at the business activity. They check your progress, your IP. If they see a shell, a fee was paid, but no real work was done, it's a refusal.
And here's where it gets really, terrifying. The domino effect.
The group linkage rule. This is the nightmare scenario.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Let's say you're doing everything right. You're in Canada, you're building the product. But you have 4 co-founders, and one of them, the one designated as the essential person, usually the CEO or CTO, gets refused.
Why would they get refused?
Could be anything. Maybe they fail a medical, maybe there's a security issue, or maybe they didn't do their active management, they stayed home.
Okay, so they get refused. What happens to me, the person doing all the work?
You get refused. Automatically.
Even though I did everything right.
Doesn't matter. If the essential person goes down, the entire group goes down with them. The application is treated as a single entity.
That is brutal. So you're legally tethered to these people. Their failure is your failure.
It means you have to choose your co-founders very, very wisely.
Okay, so Group A has to race to June 30th, prove they're actively working, and pray their co-founders don't mess up.
That is the gauntlet they have to run.
Right. Let's pivot. What about Group B? The listeners who are thinking, I missed the cutoff, I don't have a certificate. What happens now?
Currently, they're sort of staring into a void. You cannot apply for the startup visa right now. The door is locked.
But not forever. There's talk of a new pilot program coming.
Yes, the Entrepreneur Pilot. We expect it to launch mid to late 2026, and the expectation is that it will look very different.
How so?
Think tighter enforcement of that active management rule, higher funding requirements for incubators. The days of pay a fee and get a letter are likely over.
And I'm guessing they'll want to control the numbers this time.
Oh, absolutely. The biggest change we expect is a capped intake system.
Like Express Entry, where they only let a certain number in each year.
Exactly like that. The era of unlimited intake is gone. They want to prevent another backlog. It'll probably become competitive. Only the best businesses get invited.
There's also a note here about work permits. It used to be you could get one while you waited.
You still can if you're in Group A with that 2025 certificate. But for new founders, those optional work permits are restricted. You can't just apply for an SUV work permit because, well, you can't apply for the SUV.
So if I'm an entrepreneur in Dubai or Sao Paulo with a great idea, do I just sit on my hands until late 2026 and hope for the best?
No. And that brings us to the most critical strategic pivot. If you wait, you lose. The advice from experts is to pivot immediately to the C-11.
The C-11. Sounds like a character from Star Wars.
It does, doesn't it? But it stands for the C11 Significant Benefit Work Permit. It's the alternative pathway to get to Canada now.
Okay, how is it different from the startup visa?
The startup visa is a permanent residence application.
Yeah.
The C11 is a work permit application, so it's temporary. But you apply by proving you're an entrepreneur who will bring significant economic benefit to Canada.
Significant economic benefit. That sounds subjective.
It is. An immigration officer decides. And that's why your business plan has to be rock solid. It's not just about a cool idea. It's about proving you'll create jobs, bring new tech or service in an underserved region.
But the big advantage is speed, right?
It gets you into the country so you can start building. And that is the core of the strategy.
So walk me through it. You use the C11 to get in, start building, and then what?
And then, when the new entrepreneur pilot launches in late 2026, you're already on the ground. You have a functioning business. You might even have revenue. You are what they call shovel ready.
Ah, I get it. So instead of applying with a promise of a business, you're applying with an actual business.
That's it, exactly. The new pilot will almost certainly favor businesses that have market validation. If you're already in Canada on a C11, paying taxes, hiring people, you become a prime candidate. You're basically cutting the line by proving your worth in advance.
But there's a catch. The SUV didn't require your own money. The C11, does it require your own cash?
And that's the financial reality check. Yes. For the C11, and almost certainly for the new pilot, showing personal capital investment increases your credibility a lot.
You have to have skin in the game.
You do. If you say you'll bring significant benefit, but you haven't invested $1 of your own, IRCC is going to be skeptical.
So the days of the free ride, immigration through incubators they're over.
That is a very fair assessment. The bar is being raised from having an idea to building a reality. It shifts the focus from dreamers to operators with capital.
Okay, let's bring this all together. We're at a fork in the road.
A very sharp fork, yeah.
On the left, the legacy holders. If that's you, holding a 2025 certificate, your mission is urgent. Submit your PR application before June 30, 2026. Do not mess around.
And make sure you are audit-proof. Be the CEO if you're supposed to be the CEO.
Right. And on the right fork, the newcomers, the people who missed the cutoff. Your mission is the C11 pivot.
Don't wait for the pilot. Use the C11 to get to Canada, capitalize the business, and get a running start for when the new rules drop.
And a quick wallet check. This isn't free.
Yeah?
The government fees add up.
They do. For the legacy PR processing, you're looking at about $2,385 Canadian. A spouse is another $1,525. It is a real financial commitment.
But the biggest cost is always time and opportunity.
Always.
You know, what really stands out to me here is the shift in philosophy. The startup visa started as this idealistic, come one, come all, just have a great idea program.
It was designed to attract talent, not just capital. It was about potential.
But now, it feels like the government is just saying, prove it.
I think that's the perfect way to put it. The era of passive immigration for entrepreneurs is dead. They're not looking for people who just have an idea anymore. They want people who are actively building it.
Which raises the final question for everyone listening. If the requirement shifts from promise to performance, is your startup actually robust enough to get you across the border? It's not about the paperwork anymore.
It's about the business. And that's a much harder test to pass.
Thanks for diving in with us. Good luck with the paperwork, and we'll see you on the next one.